Hello and welcome back to the awesome wristwatch review channel. And today I'm very excited to share with you a comparison video, and it is the comparo video of the 116234 Datejust with the vintage 16234 Datejust. I'm very lucky to borrow the vintage Datejust from a friend for this review. It is in very good condition, just service from the Rolex service center. So it's a good time to do a review of these two. Right, they're slightly different in terms of the dial design. The one on the left, the 116234, is with the rhodium dial with the diamond hour markers, while the vintage piece, the 16234, is the more traditional baton hour markers. Now I should point out that the vintage piece, this particular one, is in 904 steel, so it is a neo-vintage piece, right? So let's get on with the review. Firstly, let us take a look at the packaging of the modern iteration as well as the vintage iteration. Okay, now I have put the boxes side by side. On the left is the presentation case or the box of the 116234 Datejust, and on the right is the presentation case and the documents and the pouch for the 16234. Right, it should be noted that the 116234 is not the absolute latest iteration of the Datejust. The latest iteration is the 126234, but this is the one with the hidden clasp which I purchased. So this box is not the latest version with the flap that comes under the lid, but it's very close to it. And design wise, I can see that Rolex has maintained roughly the same design language by keeping to a dark outer leather bound covering for their watches. And the interior, they have moved away from the vintage wooden lining in the interior, which is actually very lovely in my humble opinion, and I love it very much. It will stand the test of time very well. In fact, this piece is about 30 years old and it's still absolutely in pristine condition if you take a look. As for the modern iteration, it is felt line, as you can see, lined with a soft velvety felt material. I'm not sure if it will last, it will hold its integrity just as well after 30 years. We shall see, but I do not think so, because felt tends to get pretty dirty over time. As for the manuals, the guarantees and all that, Rolex has kept very much to the same design language by keeping it a leather material, right? So that's the presentation cases. Let's get on with the watch review itself. Okay, thanks for waiting, and let's start off with the dial design of these two pieces, the dial and bezel. Maybe we start with the bezel. In terms of the bezel, these two pieces are endowed with solid gold fluted bezel, as you can see, and if you look at it, I would say there is hardly any difference at all. In fact, Rolex kept to the dimensions and design of the white gold fluted bezel exactly as it was 30 years ago. So that is testament to the longevity of the design of Rolex watches, right? Still looks as good as it did 30 years ago. In terms of dial, I would say, because these two are essentially different dial designs, the typical Rolex design language is still there, with the white gold applied Rolex crown at the 12 o'clock, the simple baton hands that are very well shaped, I would say, because it looks very legible. That too is no different than it was 30 years ago. And if you're able to get a black dial design, you will find that the markers have changed somewhat over time. Markers are now loom filled instead of filled with the loom dot over there. All right. So in terms of dial design, it is very similar as well. Right. In terms of case, let me just zoom in to show you. The case wise, yes, it has changed somewhat. The case sides have not changed much. Let me just put a side-by-side comparison to show you. Yes, the typical oyster case is still very similar, with its double convex design, which is curved over here and curved over here. So if you get a chance to feel the Rolex case, you will find it is lovely to feel because it is double concave design. It concaves over here once each and one more time over here. So that is not changed, except that for the modern iteration, the pinholes are no longer present. Some would say they love the pinholes for ease of which to change the strap. So that's a plus and minus depending on how you look at it. And front on, you will see that this is where the main design change has been. The newer iteration has got polished lugs, which are thicker, whereas the vintage one has got satin finish lugs that are thinner. Right. In fact, if you look at the 1-2 series Datejust, they have reverted more towards the slim lug design. Right. So they say fashion goes full circle. This is exactly what they mean. Right. So this case wise, that's what you see. And in terms of the crown, let me just zoom in. Yes, the crown wise, I would say, if you can look at the crown, it is no different as well. Again, testament to the absolute longevity of the Rolex design. Absolutely brilliant. Now let's look at the bracelets. All right. Yes, now this is where you will see quite a vast difference in the quality. On the left is the modern iteration with its solid center links, solid end links, I beg your pardon, the solid center links as well. Whereas in the vintage version, the end links are hollow and so are the center links. It's not so visible, but if you look closely, you can see that it is hollow. Okay, in terms of stretch, not so bad, I would say, considering this is a 30-year-old watch and it's got hollow center links. The stretch is holding up pretty well. Again, testament to the 904 steel that Rolex employs in their watches. This is testament to Rolex commitment to quality. Right. Now it tapers down to the clasp, the fold over clasp. Now this is where there is a difference as well. Let me just put it back for you. Okay. For the 116234, it has what we call the hidden clasp, hidden jubilee clasp, which I love, and it gives it a very bracelet kind of feel, which I like. Of course, the modern iteration of the 36mm Datejust has reverted back to the, I beg your pardon, to the more obvious glass design, but it albeit in a more modern design. Okay, but let's look at the fold over mechanism. Of course, the newest version has got a very solid feel to it with milled steel, whereas the older iteration, the 16234, is made of the stamped steel, which is substantially thinner and not as robust. But because it's made of 904 steel, if you fold it and you hold it in your hands, you will find that it is still exceptionally sturdy and holding up very well for a 30-year-old watch. In fact, it looks absolutely brilliant. Now let me just put it on wrist to show you how they look like. Starting with the modern iteration first. Put it further up. And the vintage piece. Just getting the focus. Yep, there you have it. Again, as you can see, Rolex design is really, I don't know, it would be right to say so, but it's really timeless. This watch is 30 years old, older than this particular piece. And for any other brand, you'll be able to see a vast difference in the quality, a vast difference in the design. But for Rolex, this vintage Datejust looks, I would say, very close in terms of the look and feel on the wrist. It looks just as lovely as the modern iteration. Again, testament to the exceptional design quality, the effort Rolex puts in to mill their watches out of 904 steel, and that ensures the longevity of the watch that can last for generations. And purchasing a Rolex would certainly be an investment. And time has proven that it has held its value very well. Now let me just take this piece off. Yep, there you have it. This is a comparison video of the modern 116234 versus the 16234 Datejust, and I think you will find the question whether the vintage Datejust still holds its quality and value to be quite obvious. It is there. Well, I do hope you've enjoyed this comparison review on the Awesome Wristwatch channel. As always, I'd like to wish you a lovely, wonderful day ahead and wishing you well. And if you do enjoy the content, I would be very grateful indeed if you could like and subscribe, because it would help the channel very much so. Wishing you a glorious day ahead. Ciao!